Got your guy waiting for us, so
All
shouldn't
right.
keep
So,
him waiting too long. Let's see. It says excellent connection. Let's see. Is it going to come up here? All right. It is. Okay. I'm going to start. Oh, wait a minute. In stream. Not yet. No. We just started. Okay. Um, all right. Do we have sound from
um,
our our viewer? Can you type in the chat for us?
oh yeah, I'll tell.
Sure.
He just saw my messages.
Okay, yeah, we're on a delay, so
Hey, so Colin, can you hear both of us, Josh and um, Josh and I? Oh, Colin wrote that he can hear us all. Um,
okay, good deal. All
um,
right. Okay, well, we shall start our third attempt at a live stream. Um, let me, is there anything, I don't know if there's anything you want to discuss, but the probably the most exciting thing that we posted, I think, in the last little bit, a couple of stories actually, but one specifically from Cecosesola in Venezuela. Um, they made a nice little video that I did made a transcript for people who prefer to read, but it's a nice kind of introduction to a co-op that we don't hear nearly enough about in the US. So let's go ahead and put the screen up here.
oh, by the way, Colin's gonna stay on a few more minutes to give
Oh, Najwa is here.
yeah, to give Ajua a shot. Um, to hear Ajua.
Yeah, yeah.
Did you say Ajua hopped on?
Yes, I'm
Oh,
here.
okay, cool. I'll check in with Colin.
It's delayed several moments. So okay. Um,
Maybe Ajua can start us
so
off. So Colin
yeah,
can yeah.
Najwa, we
What
need oh,
to say?
sorry, we just need to hear you talk.
Okay. Hello, hello. Sorry, I'm late. I have a friend in town and got sort of sidetracked. I'll try to
All
fix this
right.
light. Okay.
All right, Colin
Uh,
says it's all good, no feedback.
okay.
All right.
All right. Whew. Um, yes, so uh once again we've run a couple of articles about Cecosesola cooperative in Venezuela. Um, I found a nice little short video that they produced not too long ago, and I thought it was a good introduction. So I went ahead and made a transcript for it. Something I like to do and find some audio or video content that you know is worthy and needs to be as widely accessible as possible. So anything I think about Secosa is falls into that category. Um, so uh, the the video is definitely worth a watch. Here on YouTube. The this cooperative is incredibly impressive, because it has zero hierarchy. It has no CEO, no board of directors, no managers. It is 100% horizontal, and they are, as it says here, they have 25,000 families who are involved with their cooperative funeral services. They each, contribute 20 cents a week, and they get funeral services for up to 9 family members. They have 100,000 families that shop at their food fairs. Um, they, produce 700 tons of fruits and vegetables a week. Um, they've got 50 families and 7 small processing plants. They produce their own pasta, their own granola, honey, fruit pulp, seasonings, vanilla, household cleaning products. They've got their own bank. They have their own hospital. um, and all of this, as they say, without adopting the culture of the bosses. So and they say right here, we began with the traditional organization structure with the board of directors, managers, and employees, but in the process, we discovered new ways of getting things done. Day by day, we strive to transcend the individualism and egotism we carry within us by rotating tasks and continuously reflecting on our daily behavior. Um, so they say, yeah, that we no longer have managers, nor a board of directors, nor any domineering structure.
Wow.
So super, yes. Um, Very interesting. And I was thinking about it, to start us off, and just like kind of with a spicy take. I was thinking about why we don't hear barely anything at all about Cecosesola, despite the fact they've been around for, I think, 50 years or so, and that they're very large. And, they're even in our hemisphere, but, we don't hear really anything about them. It's only in, recently that, the last couple of years, I even was made aware of them. Whereas we know, a whole lot about like Mondragon, right? Everybody knows Mondragon. Nobody knows Cecosesola. Why? In the
Right.
US. And, I was thinking, I wonder if it has something to do with the fact that, most of the people in the US who are studying co-ops, into co-ops, developing co-ops, um, are tend to be from a certain class of people, a little more of the maybe professional managerial class, sorts, definitely, or, more professional, more kind of academic. And, something like Cecosesola, there's no, as compared to Mondragon, like there's no place that there are no professional managerials people.
Right.
There are no positions like that in Cecosesola, right? And so if you're a PMC type of person and you're looking at these different co-ops, Mondragon, like, oh, well, I can recognize that. And I reckon, there's a place for me there, right? And it's up in the hierarchy. Whereas in Cecosesola, there's no hierarchy. So, you know, those of us, of course, who always end up at the bottom of the hierarchy, Cecosesola seems pretty dang, good compared to even something like Mondragon, which, certainly has its issues, despite, being head and shoulders above most other companies in their industry. But anyway, so that was my thought on why something like Cecosesola gets very little play in our country.
Yeah, it's really, I think you make a great point there, Josh, because you're right. We all hear about Mondragon, but, this one we've been pretty silent on. And I was thinking that their work is so important because we don't know where our economy is headed, and they're really providing a model for us to follow if things do break down in the economy, how we can take care of our own needs. So it's really important. And I'm glad that GEO can be a vehicle for giving them more publicity and other people in this country knowledge about them so that we might be able to follow their lead.
Yeah, that what you're mentioning, Josh, too, just kind of reminds me of how like some industries we don't have to continue to develop, um, and one of them, like I hate to say it, but well, no, I don't hate to say it, but it's probably a little uncomfortable to say, but one is like a lot of the legal industry, um, like that, like this whole like so much of oppression in the United States is from, all this like everything being based through all these laws and all that. That's um, that's one of the things I think about too. Like, what are some industries that we don't need to keep developing? And part of that is essentially hierarchy, right? It's because a lot of some of these industries, they just create hierarchy, or they're used to maintain hierarchies. Um, yeah, I wonder also who doesn't want to be accused of being like a chavista or like a, I wonder if any of that stuff gets equated to being like like a supporter of Hugo Chavez or something. Because it's weird. Sometimes I'll see like
Hmm.
anti-cooperative. Um, it's so bizarre. Sometimes I don't know if it's just bots or something, but online, like when people mention, um, like socialism, communism, and some of these, out of nowhere, people will start criticizing cooperatives, and I'll be like, what does that have to do? It doesn't have to have anything to do with that. Cooperatives develop outside of those movements as well, and the different types of. I mean,
Hmm.
those things can mean many different things, um, but I was one thing that I was thinking about recently as we're like scrolling through it, and I didn't really think about this the first time that I read it, was the whole idea of the practice about the funerals, and that's kind of here in the United States already, in my opinion. Like the need for that, because I've had that conversation with my family too, where we were talking about planning for our deaths, and we recognize like almost everyone we know, like it's just kind of popular for no one to really ever be prepared, like in our circles, for the death of somebody. And I think my brother put it, I think he was making a joke, but it's like, I feel like it's a proletarian joke, and he was like, I don't want to be out selling barbecue plates to bury my mom. um, but I guess the implication is like not being prepared. I mean, you can do that within the cooperative framework, and I think that would be okay. um, but I feel like that happens because like almost so many people I see, whenever they die, I'm always just waiting for the GoFundMe to happen, and that happens so often. So I think that's probably a cooperative solution that's really needed in a lot of communities, because a lot of people are, we're just so slammed, we
Hmm.
can't, a lot of us can't even cover the cost of the death of a loved one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, and this is not, I am certain this is not the first time I have heard of a funeral co-op of this sort, I mean, because it's a human thing, right? That we all have to deal with at one point or another. So I was actually like, I seem to recall, and Audra, I don't know if you remember anything in like, Jessica's research, if there was anything, I swear that I was thinking about something like that. But I did do a quick search and found, like, for instance, there's a funeral cooperative in Ottawa. Looks like they have a couple in Canada.
Yeah, that's what I
Um,
remember learning about Canada. I don't remember
okay,
the details, but I remember that part.
Temiskaming.
Yeah.
Um, so so
I,
yeah, I mean, definitely, and a model that, no reason couldn't be adopted here. It would probably have to be more than 20 cents a week. For us. But I mean, just that basic idea of, everybody puts in a small amount, and then you can have a fund of money to help um, when the inevitable does occur. So,
yeah, my brother was a mortician, and based on
mm,
what I've seen, trust me, people would, if
mhm.
people knew what was going on, they would really want a funeral cooperative. Um, Exploiting people who take care of your dead relatives is not a good model for honoring the dead.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. No, uh, at the funeral of my adopted grandmother, the funeral director came up during the funeral and asked my adopted grandmother for the second half of the check.
Wow.
Yeah. So yeah, it can be pretty not it's not good. It's not good. So yeah, there's definitely seems like scope, and the model that they used of just, it's like a collective savings fund.
Mhm.
A little bit along the lines of like a susu or something, but like a special purpose, you know,
Mhm.
version of a collective savings. Um,
A few months ago, my mom was telling, we are talking about when my great grandmother died, and she told me that at that time they said that she didn't. They asked for the yeah payment for her funeral, and my mom was so glad that she had gotten the receipt because my great grandmother, she had paid for everything when she was living, and the funeral. The funeral, they were trying to charge her as if she didn't pay, and my mom was like,
Wow.
thank goodness I saved my receipts. And it was a lot of money. But they tried that too.
yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's sad, but that's the world that we live in. You had mentioned, Chris, the about the being associated, the co-ops being associated with Chavez and Chavismo and stuff, and socialism generally. You know, so the specifics, or at least from what I know of Cecosesola, and they speak about in the I think in this video or one of the other things that we published, they started long before, Chavez was a thing. But when the Chavez government did, come into power, and then they did, they started putting a lot of money into, co-op organizations and stuff like that, and they, said we definitely, use that. They're not turning away um, money from the government, but also, trying to not be, they're not being dependent on it. But um, so, they didn't have a, it sounded like, they didn't have a problem being associated with the Chavez and now the Maduro government, but we're also, their own thing
Mm-hmm.
separate from that. And it's interesting with the socialism because you see on both sides, like people who will, make, videos or whatever, make, posts about how co-ops are socialism, worker this is socialism that we can have right now, and then other, as a good thing, and then people who will be like, no, co-ops are social as a bad thing.
You can't win.
It's like, I guess it depends on what you think
Yeah.
about, the word socialism. um but yeah, and then lots of people who are declared self-declared socialists, who are opposed to co-ops because they're not adequately socialist, right? They're making everybody into a capitalist, that kind of argument. So I mean, it's pretty, and frankly, there's probably some validity in all of the viewpoints. It's like, I definitely see it's some form of socialism, I suppose, if in as much as workers own the means of production, that's uh, moving in that direction. But yeah, it's also, you can have workers become kind of little capitalists. And I think that's a little bit what happened in Yugoslavia when they used to have a whole lot of worker co-ops, like in their big heavy industry and stuff. And from what I've read of those, that kind of was a thing. That's definitely something that happens. But it seems like that, there's a lot of people, especially online, when you got to have an opinion, that it's just like, this is how things are. You have to decide, are co-ops good or bad? Are they socialism? Are they not? It's like sometimes yeah, sometimes no. Like that doesn't.
Well, are they fulfilling a need? Even if you're considered capitalist, there is a need
Right.
for it. So we don't really care whether it's socialist or capitalist. It's fulfilling a need.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I think one of the things that impressed us about um, Cecosesola was its revival, right? There was a period where it lost its egalitarian character,
Hmm.
then and then it got revived. It's been really cool reading this article because it's like it's a great form of I feel like agitation and encouragement because there's I was talking to someone yesterday and they're trying to do like this horizontal group and well they've been doing a horizontal group and it's going through a challenge right now and I can I told her I'm gonna print this out, and or I'm sorry, I'm gonna send you this article about this, like this one co-op. You know, it got really bad, but they came back from it. You know, like you can bounce back from stuff. It's like it's a really great inspiration.
Mhm.
I think, yeah, things that are start up as horizontal, they can go vertical, but you know, people can reverse that. And I don't think I've talked about it yet, but one thing that's pretty cool about that, about their whole revival, is how it was connected to the broader social struggle, and how like that broader social struggle is kind of like what gave him the energy or something. I don't know. You know, that's something I don't quite understand, like the dynamics of society as a whole. On, you know, I guess there are. It seems like, I guess there are like bigger social spirits, or like there's a bigger social spirit or something that does affect the consciousness of smaller groups in society and the individual. But that was really cool how like the social struggle is what like amplified them, or rather like catalyzed them to go back in and put things right.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Because they started out very grassroots, and then when they got a little successful, they, formalized and got their structure, and then, now they've moved back, after how 5 years or however many years they had being a more standard organization. Yeah. So yeah, you're right. It is definitely hopeful, because it's we certainly see some of those dynamics here in the U.S., and I think everywhere. That's just maybe a I don't know if it's a human thing or just something in our society, but it seems like anytime you have any organization that gets to a certain size or has a certain level of sway or pull or budget or something, that you know e- e- it is, and again, I don't want to be the like super naysayer about everything, but you attract people to those organizations, the positions in those organizations, who are looking for this way in the budget and stuff, and maybe the mission might be a little bit on the secondary side. So it's one thing I like about their model, in not having a CEO, not having a board of directors, that anybody who might be interested in trying to get involved with this organization, just as a way to, because they're trying to climb the career ladder or something, they're
Right.
not going to show up at all. Like, you don't have to worry about not letting them make over if your structure is such that like there is no place to advance to, so like that.
Yeah. I think that's really amazing, and it would be worth exploring that whole process that they took to go from, the hierarchy to complete collective leadership. What were some of the struggles? I'm sure some people felt like their jobs were necessary and things would fall apart. And that's the other good thing about this, is that they didn't like just go away. They reinvented themselves even after all of those problems. I guess there was a need. We have to fix this. We have to figure it out, and they did. And so it would really be worth looking at, if we can, how that happened, because I could foresee, not that I'm a fortune teller, but you kind of worry about where things are headed, that we may have to do similar kinds of things. How to let everybody know that everybody's equal here. And everybody has to work and do everybody's job, so that you really understand the necessity of how things work, and being able to fill in if somebody can't make it. All of those things are very important. So I don't know if we can. It would really be good maybe to interview some folks to get more information.
Yeah, if y'all do that interview, I think that would be a really important interview too. If y'all do it, I'd be really curious to hear about the topic of fear. Uh, I've never thought about like just talking about fear.
Mhm.
Um, but I have there's a Chicagoan named Faye Porter. She's a tenant union organizer, and one time she like proposed like we should talk about fear for tenants when talking together. Um, and I was like, man, that's a really good idea. Fear. And in this context, I think it would be cool to also talk about fear of your peers. Like, was there fear of your peers? Um, because the hierarchy was probably also considered peers too. Um, to pursue, I think, to pursue the reality that a lot of times we also do give up our power. Um, and like, I guess that's another topic to pursue too. Were people giving up their power? Was it because the way that power manifests or hierarchy manifests, it's very complex, and I'm always trying to understand it. But I see people every day giving up their power, and it seems like the easier thing to do. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes I gotta think about it too. I think about that. Am I giving up my power? Um, Sometimes maybe I do.
Yeah, I think it's easy to do when you have fear. Like if you are not feeling that confident in yourself and your skills, your ability to run things. And a lot of us don't have experience running things. So here we are, we in a co-op or we're in something where we're the ones responsible for doing everything or making sure it gets done. And some people are kind of a little shy about that. And maybe it's a fear that I might do something wrong or I might have to tell somebody something that they may not want to hear, but we have to like push through that fear. We have to try and do something, and that helps us get more confident. Especially that thing about fear of making a mistake. You know, mistakes aren't the worst thing. So yeah, I think a lot of us give up power because we think we can't run something, we think we can't do something, or that we might make some fatal mistake. And that's not the case because you have your comrades right with you, and everybody's talking about things, and so different people will see different angles and sides, and might see a hole or somewhere that won't work. And so we're actually in a better position than having one CEO or two or three making all the decisions. If we have 10 or 15 people, they have a whole multitude of experiences that they can bring to that decision making point. And so there's not a whole lot of reason to fear. I mean, that's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
reasons to be confident because we're going to cover every angle. So yeah, I think it would be good to talk about these fears. And yes, I totally agree. We give up a lot of power. I've seen that so many times, so
Yeah.
many ways.
Yeah. I mean, it's what we're enculturated to do. In all of our, most of the organizations that we're involved in throughout our lives, at least until we get into co-ops, are very hierarchical, and so I mean, it can be. I think there's fear just around, for a lot of people, just around adopting a different structure, doing things in a less hierarchical way, because it's just unfamiliar, right? And we're afraid of what we don't know, and we live in a highly individualistic culture as compared to, say, someplace like Venezuela, for instance. So we might have obstacles to overcome just culturally like that they don't have quite so many of down there. Um, yeah, and then and I think that fear, especially if you are somebody who's spent most of your working life in manual labor and working construction or janitorial or home health care or something like that. Once again, we get trained, like those of us who work in those jobs a lot. You're told in so many words, basically, even if it's not directly, like, you're not here to use your brain. That's not what you're for. Other people do that. And so if you've been told that your whole life, essentially, and then it's scary to have think like, what, I I'm gonna have to do I'm gonna do the thinking and make the decisions. Like, when you've been told over and over and over and over again, like, no, you leave that to somebody else. Like, yeah, that could be scary to take that on for sure. And then so if you've got somebody else who's like, just, I'm gonna step into the decision making role, can easy to fall back into that, I think. So it's super important, and I've seen it in directly in a worker co-op that I helped some friends set up, and then it kind of didn't last as a co-op because of this specifically. Just there were personality things that just got in the way of the co-op part of it. That didn't have much at all to do with the business. And even though everybody said that they were all about the co-op thing, when it came to actually doing it and like sharing decision making power in a real meaningful way, it turned out that no, not everybody was on board with that. So.
Mhm.
Mm. Well, um, anything else that we've been on a little I've been on a little Venezuela kick, not gonna lie, at
Heck,
Geo. Because I posted another article from Venezuela Analysis about communes in Venezuela, and um and it the authors of that article, kind of one of the points that they make, that I guess the only thing we don't need to talk entirely about Venezuela, but um I just really liked at the beginning, they say, um in the world at large, the fact that an ordinary group of people comes together in some remote part of Venezuela to democratically determine their production and their way of living in a commune could seem to be completely unimportant. In the eyes of most who shape public opinion, this would be a quintessential non-event. To be sure, it is never news. Nevertheless, if there were such a thing as a revolutionary news agency, the formation of such a commune and its advances would be the stuff of front-page articles, with banner headlines such as "Extra, a new commune is formed," or "Communards take the next step," um, which I liked as it's like, okay, this is what we're trying to do at Geo, right? It's like somebody needs to be doing this, and we certainly don't hear about these kind of things nearly enough. So if you want to deep dive into communes in Venezuela, the article "News from Nowhere,"
Oh, I
building
saw that.
communal life in Venezuela, is for you.
There's I wonder if they have one there, but there's, I don't know, have y'all seen this? There's a translation of the like revolutionary Kurdish movement's manual for building communes.
oh
Have y'all
no,
seen that?
yeah.
It's called
Mm-mm.
the internal. I think it's called the internal system or structure of the communes. It's pretty cool. Like a manual for going out and building communes, and they've been building them. I think they have like 3,000
Wow.
communes that they've built in Rojava. Uh, and hey, I think we got to build them here too.
Oh,
Uh,
absolutely. I mean,
yeah.
so many people are being homeless now because of the pandemic, or, their housing is threatened. What are these people going to do? Communes would be a great solution. And, in terms of geo, and what you were saying earlier about how people don't know, they have not experienced stuff because they haven't heard about it. Well, if you read about a commune or you read about a co-op or a collective, and stuff that people are doing, that sparks ideas in your head, and so now that some other form is possible, and you have the information, and then you can give that a try. And that's better than sitting around waiting on these government agencies that are not going to do anything for you anyway. So it's better to attempt to do something, and you'll learn something in the process. So the more information we have out there, I think the more tools that we give people.
Yeah, I I don't know if y'all have heard of this either, but in for the Spanish anarcho syndicalist movement, they actually were really obsessed with communes as well. And I made this translation of, it was like it's the 1936 Zaragoza, Congress, and in
Mhm.
there, like, they knew that there was gonna be like a coup d'état soon, and so they gathered from all over Spain. The CNT, the Spanish CNT, the National Confederation of Labor, they gathered in preparation of that, and because they knew it was going to be a revolutionary opportunity. So they got together and they said, all right, we're going to make a revolution, but what's the revolution going to look like? And in there, they spend a lot of time talking about communes and how like communes would be like the a base, one of the important bases of the new revolutionary society. And they lost. A lot of their membership was murdered. Well, they murdered by collaboration of the Soviet Union, United States, like all the capitalists of the world. Soviet Union helped out in destroying that revolution.
Hmm.
But when they got together again, like kind of in the 70s, they reaffirmed that they still want to pursue the communes as being part of like their revolutionary objective. So yeah, they have a long history and a lot of struggles.
Yeah. And a lot of good information to share. Even surviving after all of those attacks and stuff. How did they do it? Because, I think similar things could happen in this country.
Mhm.
Yeah, great lessons. I think it's going to be
Um,
interesting to reverse, the situation where a lot of the world looks to the U.S. For answers and solutions or help or whatever. But now we're talking about other places in the world being solutions for us because capitalism is failing and whole systems are breaking down. And we look to other places for solutions now.
yeah, I think I think it's definitely high time, should be obvious. We don't got them all.
Right.
Um, uh, so on the other end, to kind of shift the topic, but it's something that came up yesterday. I got a text from my father who wanted to know if I knew who KKR was or is. I said yes, I do, and it's a private equity company. And he had seen something I think on PBS or CBS about their new project, which is he said they didn't use the word co-op, but it sounded similar. And indeed, the private equity people at KKR and other private equity places are starting to poke around in the cooperative space. And
Wow.
these are, people whose MO for, decades now, since back in the 80s when they were called corporate raiders, they got a little better PR and started calling themselves private equity, but they still do the same thing, which is buy up companies, generally by putting that company into debt, and then selling off the pieces of it, doing some kind of financial accounting gymnastics in order to transfer wealth from the company to themselves and their limited partners. So not the kind of people really that we want looking in, we want having anything to do with co-ops or even know that we exist, frankly. But the story in the private equity world is for, I don't know, maybe getting close to 10 years now. They used to have really high returns, like it was a good way to goose your portfolio returns if you were a pension fund or something like that. But their private equities returns have been going down for a long time, and yeah, I think they're looking for some new uh some new sheep to fleece, as it were, or something. And we've fallen into their viewpoints. So they're talking about things that sound like worker co-op, kind of, or like an ESOP, or an employee-owned trust, but that, and they say, of course, oh, this is about worker empowerment. But if you believe that a multi-billionaire, you know, private equity firm cares about worker empowerment, like, well, I got a bridge to sell you. They know that's not the goal. And yeah, so anyway, they have a website, and I'm kind of even loath to hold them up, but I think it is It's very close to some actual co-op news service. I can't remember if it's not Ownership Matters. That's the real one. But at any rate, so private equity people are kind of talking about co-op stuff. I saw an article a couple days ago with private equity people talking about using the co-op structure in quote Web3, aka cryptocurrency nonsense, about using a co-op structure as a way to let the initial investors or founders of Web3 projects exit. And so, there's lots of people who are looking right now at using like co-op and co-op like structures for purposes that, from what I can tell, what I think are kind of pretty antithetical to what an actual co-op is supposed to be. Like, you should not be setting up a co-op to benefit a private equity company or a crypto bro who wants to cash in on their their latest DAO or whatever it is. So
And that's pretty dangerous. I mean, the first thing it's going to do is when it's going to give co-ops a bad name. When we first started the U.S. Federation of Worker Co-ops, there was, I believe, someone from Cecopa, the Worker Co-op International Organization. At that time, I think it was 2004, there were companies pretending to be co-ops and doing really exploitative things to workers. And so it was really giving co-ops a bad name. And so something like this can do the same thing, give co-ops a bad name, and even get co-ops outlawed in different states because they do something that's really oppressive and exploitative to people. So, I think we need to watch that very carefully.
I don't know if this really happened, but someone told me that in the industrial workers of the world, that this one capitalist like signed union cards for all the employees and said that it was like a unionized shop, maybe even a cooperative shop, but they investigated it and it wasn't true at all. So I'm always wary of all sorts of scams that people are gonna try to play. But I'm I'm not sure if I would be able to. Maybe I would notice it right away because I'll probably ask somebody like, "Hey, does this look right?" Um, but if there are any resources about how to identify what should we call it, cooperative rating, co-op rating, um, yeah, maybe we should start sharing that stuff around.
Yeah,
Um, because I'm pretty sure they're gonna capture some naive people.
right.
Um, because I feel like there's not enough peer support happening at the moment, and I can easily see some people who like nobody's responding to them for the help that they need, and these people are ready.
Right.
It's like in one of the tenant unions we're in, these we have like real estate people like reaching out to us trying to teach people how to wanted to teach people how to um, be landlords and buy homes. I'm like, man, I really wish that we had housing cooperatives reaching out to us saying how like, hey, we'll teach you how to transition to a housing co-op. But
Right.
they're way more organized and they got like better outreach. um
Yeah, that's an excellent point. I mean, that's exactly what we need right now. In DC in the 80s, there was a whole movement to get any apartment building because it was gentrification was going on, and landlords were like trying to force tenants out of their buildings that they had lived in 30 and 40 years by turning off the water, not fixing up things. And so tenants had to organize, and they got a bill passed where any building that was sold had to be offered to the tenants first, and so that they could turn it into a housing cooperative. And then DC government also gave tenants loans to help purchase those buildings. And so as a result, DC has the second highest number of cooperative housing in the country, second only to New York. But the point is, we need those skills need to be passed around so that, a housing crisis already is existing in some places. Like, Baltimore has like rows and rows of abandoned housing that could be turned into cooperatives. And I'm sure there's a need. So yes, we need people to take some of those skills, and put this information out there so we could have somebody telling you how to start a co-op, how to be joint owners of a house, even if it's just a house that has 4 bedrooms. If people can just pool their resources, get some help. I'm a member of Ella Jo Baker Intentional Community Cooperative. We got help from the government. We bought 6 houses and turned them into 15 units. Got a nonprofit developer and turned them into 15 units of cooperative housing. And people can do the same thing. And so we need these resources out there.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's definitely a hunger, I think, and this happens, as we know, every time the economy uh goes in the toilet. All of a sudden there's a big interest in in co-ops and stuff, and we're seem to be having that again right now. And yeah, we need to make sure it's the good information, people have access to information, and it's the right stuff and the right people that they're working with. Not back to my hobby horse of a minute ago there, not the private equity people. I actually found this ownership works, like, and so you're saying, Audra, like, this is going to give us a bad name, and that's what I'm really worried about. People who are, they're looking for something, and then they go out and what they find is this thing, Ownership Works, which I'll read from their website here. Ownership Works is a nonprofit organization that partners with companies and investors to provide all employees with the opportunity to build wealth at work. We've seen broad-based employee ownership create meaningful wealth-building opportunities for employees, uplift families, reinvigorate corporate cultures, and improve business performance. Providing all employees with a stake in the value they help create is not just better business and smarter investing, it's also the right thing to do. And this is, the typical kind of employee ownership stuff, which is being lumped in with, worker co-ops as though it's somehow the same thing, even by people and organizations within our own movement. For instance, and I will call them out, the Democracy at Work Institute has kind of gone all in. They've, like, in some of their recent communiques and stuff, they're it's employee ownership. They seem to have moved away from worker co-ops per se. I hope that's not true entirely, but they're much more focused on this broader term of employee ownership, which basically means, like, oh, you were gifted some stock in the company that you work at. And what is the reason for it? I just thought it was so interesting reading this. Like, they give themselves away, they tell on themselves in their very first sentence, right? They are a nonprofit organization that partners with companies and investors, not with
Right.
workers.
Yes.
Right? They're partnering with the money people.
Right.
And what their goal is, and they're selling this to them on the basis that, okay, yeah, create meaningful wealth building opportunities for employees, but they end with improve business performance, reinvigorate corporate culture, right? And it's, it is true that if you give people an actual stake in whatever it is that they're doing, they're more likely to, work at it harder. They're just showing, companies how you can use this aspect of human psychology to get more out of your workers. They're certainly not going to be telling these companies that, yeah, they'll be more productive, and you should give their increased surplus to them, right? It's like, the point is, like, it's also going to make your company more profitable. It's going to make more money for you. Oh, it's not just the right thing to, it's, and also you get to pat yourself on the back and say, talk about your angel wings, because you gave some stock to your employees, even though it was really just, to get money for yourself at the end of the day. So, and this is a Peter Stavros project, who is the KKR, Colbert Kravis Roberts or something like that, co-founder. So at any rate, I'll get off the PE thing for a second, but it's something that I think we need to be aware of, and that we should be skeptical of, um, and not, you know, think that, oh well, maybe we can get something good and useful out of a Peter Stavros or some of these other folks, like they're going to eat our lunch if we try to, like, play with them. Like, there's no way we're going to like take them for a ride. So um anyway, just something I want to throw out there.
Yeah, I think
um hmm, Go
no,
ahead.
I was just going to say it's important to realize that they're looking for new markers and they're looking around at what we're doing because they see the handwriting on the wall and they're going to use the same buzzwords and the concepts and try to uh, mimic us, but really not do what the things that are going to be in the benefit of workers. They might give them a little stock, but basically it's the same exploitative relationship, even if they, do come through on a little bit of money. So I think it's important for people to recognize that there are wolves out here in the movement, and to the extent that we can do articles. GEO is always looking for writers to help write some of these articles because we are a volunteer organization. But we need to have this information out there for people. Like how do you tell a true co-op? How do you? Oh, and the other thing is that they're moving toward worker ownership. See, that's very clear, as opposed to, I mean, employee ownership, as opposed to worker cooperatives. Most people don't know what that is. But ownership, you get that immediately. And so, yeah, they're going to use that kind of language to pull people in and get them to work harder, sort of like some other groups that we know where workers were promised a whole lot of benefits and home ownership and all kinds of things. And that stuff, I don't believe, ever came through. So it's just important. I think it's just something that we should have on our radar. And if people have experience doing writing and knowing how to, help people to figure out the phonies out here, the fake um, organizations, we should definitely try to put that information out.
Is there a good like video anywhere or article maybe on Geo that talks about the difference between employee ownership and worker cooperativism? Or...
um there are some articles, and actually I just recently, I think I put a link to it on our site. That was actually in, yeah, it was, I believe it was this one from this, I think it's a magazine or a website that's devoted to the coffee industry. Um, but they, yeah, have an article in which they actually kind of describe the differences between employee stock ownership plans, worker owned co-ops, and employee ownership trusts, um, using some data and some information from Project Equity. But the main, well, there's a number of main differences, but in an ESOP, the thing to know is that, or to check out if you're going to work at an ESOP, is whether or not your stocks in the company also come with any kind of control or democratic vote on anything. And then also, like in ESOPs, the people own different amounts of stock in the ESOP, and you vote your stock. It's not one member, one vote. It's one stock, one vote. So they're not democratic. Generally, the management has, the lion's share of the stock in the ESOP anyway. Um, so yeah, there are a number of differences. I mean, it's not, to me, it's like, it's not just that there are a number of differences. They're completely separate things. A worker cooperative is an actual ownership and governance structure. An ESOP is a tax advantaged retirement plan. Like, those are not even in the same category. So it's a little bit bizarre to me that they get lumped together, and a little bit disappointing to me that they that it's sometimes us doing that lumping. um, but I will put a link in the chat to the stream for that article as well, in the Sprudge or Sprudge.
And
And
there was
is the
yeah,
article called "From Worker to Owner Behind the Scenes at Three Coffee Roasting Cooperatives"?
It
Okay,
is indeed.
okay.
Yep.
Sorry, Ajwa.
yeah, I was going to say, like, back in the early 2000s, we did try to define what a worker co-op is. And I think Geo wrote about some of those articles, some of those discussions. It was with the U.S. Federation of Worker Cooperatives. Just
Oh no, Adjua froze
Right.
in a very unfortunate part of her sentence. Um, hopefully she'll come back. I think she was going to say that, yeah, there have been discussions over the years, and if it was in the early 2000s, it's probably in our archive on our website. But that was a little before my time here, so to look that up.
Yeah, I need to get sharper too about identifying the employee stock ownership plans, the ESOPs. Um, because yeah, we're looking for co-ops to connect with too, and
Mhm.
sometimes the language is kind of weird on websites. I'm like, what do you?
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, my mother, for instance, used to work for Life Touch Studios. They do school photos and stuff like that, and they're 100% employee owned, and they put that on all of their materials, and it is true in a technical sense, but working there, I mean, or it used to be, I think they actually got sold out, to some private company, like happens to a lot of ESOPs. But yeah, she working there was just like working at any other corporate job, just as frustrating, just as little say in anything that mattered. And then when they I think they sold out, is my what was implied to me when I was talking to it about my dad the other day, that yeah, he said when they sold out, the employees didn't have enough stocks for their votes to make any difference in the vote anyway. Um, so yeah, but it's not 100%. Like, even though I'm pretty down on ESOPs, or not like a huge, like, excited by the model or anything, there are some companies nonetheless that do have their ESOP, and then actually have some sort of democratic, like, governance structure as well built in, like, on top of that. And shout out to the Vermont Employee Ownership Center for actually encouraging, people who come, people come to them to, looking for ESOPs to, they also promote worker co-ops, and encourage their ESOP companies even to, make democracy a part of it, as well as just the ownership aspect.
Hey, how much time do you have? Because I feel like we're just getting started, but we probably gotta land the plane sooner than later.
Yeah, well, I think we are just getting started, but seeing as how Adjua, I don't know, maybe like did a meteor hit DC or something, she's gone. Doesn't look like she's coming back. And yeah, and we're sitting here talking to ourselves at the moment, although it's nice, to have a good, actual recording. Um, so, oh, it looks like she's back, but
I think we should at
maybe,
least let Ajua say what they.
yes, we should let
Yeah.
Adjua finish. Yeah, and then maybe we can wrap it up.
The last thing that we heard, Ajua, was
Oh, and you're
that
muted.
that there was a time where worker co-op was trying to be defined in the U.S. Federation of Worker Co-ops, and then you got cut off right in the beginning of that.
yes. So yes, the U.S. Federation did a lot of work in trying to help people define worker cooperatives so that they would not fall prey to groups claiming to be worker co-ops. And so I believe GEO wrote some of those definitions down and had some kind of discussions about that. So we may have some early articles about how to define worker co-ops that maybe we can resurrect to help people figure out, like, who's got the power. If workers don't have the power, it's not a worker co-op.
I feel like just having this video made will be easy for me to share with people if, when we need to be a good way to start things up. Do you hear feedback, by the way?
Yeah, I think that was Ajua's mic, and I just muted her.
Okay.
And that seems to have stopped it. So that was probably it. So yeah, well, with that, I think, yeah, maybe we can wrap this up and call it a successful, an actually technically successful section. We got the sound, and we actually remembered to hit the start streaming button. So yeah, we'll have to do this again in the near future, and maybe we can go longer next time. And yeah, so
yeah, I think that was fun. Like, there's more stuff that I want to talk about based on the conversation we're having. This is gonna be cool.
Yes, that's going to be great. I'm looking forward to doing more, and other folks at GEO with different perspective as well.
Yeah. All right. Well, we will call it a night.
All right. Before
Okay.
before we end the stream, I just want to say thank you, Colin, for